Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back. We are about to resume hearing evidence from Mr. Richard Burnley. Mr. Burnley, good afternoon. Can you see me and can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Good. Thank you very much. Are you ready to carry on?
I am, yes.
Very good. Thank you very much. Well, in that case, I'm going to invite Mr. Millett to continue putting questions to you. Yes, Mr. Millett, when you're ready.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Burnley, after the letter before action that you or Kingspan sent to the NHBC, it's right, isn't it, that you met the NHBC, I think, on two occasions, 5th of March 2015 and then the 18th of June 2015?
That's correct.
Yes. And if we go to NHB 50977, we'll see a note of that meeting, the first of those meetings. This is an NHBC generated note of the meeting on the 5th of March 2015. And from the NHBC, you can see who was present: Ian Davis, Steve Evans, and Graham Perrier, as well as Dave White and John Lewis. And then from Kingspan, we can see that you attended together with Tony Miller-Chapp and Ivor Meredith. If we go down to item 1, action 1, we can see what the first discussion was and the rest of the actions under that. Now, it will be striking to those looking at these documents that we finished with a letter before action on the 13th of March from your solicitors. And the next thing we see is a meeting on the 5th of March, sorry, February. And then the next thing we see is a meeting on the 5th of March. What happened between the 13th of February, when your solicitors wrote their letter before action, and this meeting?
Well, I don't remember the exact timing, but I know that around the time that obviously that letter was sent, we were trying to arrange this meeting. So I think all that happened was that we set up this meeting to go and sit down and for me to meet them and understand the problems.
Looking at the terms of action 1, it says details of test program, wall typologies, timescales, duration, and sequencing to be provided to NHBC, who, Kingspan, TMIM, that's Tony Miller-Chapp, Ivor Meredith, by 13th of March. You see that? Do you know whether that was done?
I know it was done. Did we meet the timeline? I don't know. I mean, I know that this was where we were talking about what we were going to test to give them their evidence. So I know it was done. I just don't know. I can't confirm if it was done by the 13th of March.
Okay. And if you look at item 3, that says NHBC to discuss amending scope of options for demonstrating compliance stated in BCA guidance note. What was that in relation to? Do you know?
I'm not entirely clear. I mean, I can only read it as it's written. So, but obviously it's an action for Steve Evans, I think, at the NHBC. Right.
Do you remember any discussion at this meeting along the lines of NHBC wishing to widen the routes to compliance with approved document B?
Only insofar as what's written there.
I see. You don't have any independent recollection of
I don't know.
I see. Do you have any recollection of this question being discussed internally within Kingspan, that the widening or amendment of scope of options for demonstrating compliance?
No, not involving me.
Was there an element of compromise here that you were discussing? Namely, Kingspan would do more testing, as had been requested, and NHBC, for their part, would look at how to widen the scope of application.
I don't know that it was compromise. I mean, you could see it that way, but it was more about there was clearly gaps in evidence that they required to make them comfortable in the use of the product. And then it was whether, from their perspective, the evidence which wouldn't be for exactly the systems being used in a building, they would then be able to interpret it as systems that could be read from that as being acceptable, is I think what that is aimed at. But that was with them, not with us.
When you say that was with them and not with us, the NHBC was to discuss the widening stroke amendment scope of options, and the who there is NHBC SE, that's Steve Evans, by the end of March. Do you remember with whom the NHBC was to have those discussions?
I don't know, but I do seem to recall that I think Mr. Evans was involved with the BCA document. So I don't know whether that was the link. I think that's my recollection.
Right. Do you remember why the NHBC was proposing a discussion of widening or amending the scope of options for demonstrating compliance?
No, I don't know.
Did you see this as a way of influencing NHBC's national policy?
No, I don't think we were trying to influence their policy at all. I think the purpose of the meeting, going back to the word that you introduced, I think I was wanting to understand their exasperation and come up with a plan of work that Ivor and Tony could deliver on to make them happy that we were actually meeting their needs.
Before this meeting, in light of that answer you've just given us, had you taken any steps to get to the bottom of why it was that there had been no plan of work yet identified and conceived, and why there had as yet been no further testing done, as had been asked for by the NHBC since at least the previous June, if not before that?
No, I mean, this was when, I think around this time was also when it was brought to my knowledge that there were concerns around Ivor Meredith's workload and the work he was doing. And so I was trying to understand, well, what extra resource did we need to look into providing to help get through the volume of work?
You see, some months had gone by, and we've been over this a bit already, but we're now in early March 2015. Some months had gone by during which you, as you told us, knew that the NHBC were exasperated. Did you come to this meeting with a plan already in place to conduct the testing that the NHBC had been asking for?
Well, my plan, which I think I explained to Ivor and Tony before we went in, I said, look, what I'm hearing is, I can see what we've got in terms of communications with them. I want to understand what it is they need from us. And the conversations were more about the future than the past. So the testing that they wanted done to give them the evidence to be able to sign off on buildings.
I see. What was the relevance of item 3 then? The discussion by the NHBC of widening or amending scope of options for demonstration of compliance?
Well, I think, as I've said, because of the numbers of combinations of materials that could be used in a system, so different types of materials, different thicknesses, then you just couldn't test every single possible construction that could theoretically be used. So we were trying to perform tests that would give them confidence to use those results on as broad a range of build-ups as possible, but then they would need to feel that that was something they could do. And I think that was the premise of that comment.
Widening and amending scope of options for demonstrating compliance would benefit Kingspan, wouldn't it? Because it would mean that you wouldn't have to have a test for every single build-up.
Well, I mean, given the number of build-ups that could possibly be, you couldn't test every single build-up. So exactly. Actually, it helped the industry.
Well, it helped the industry, but it also helped Kingspan, surely, because if the scope of options for demonstration of compliance was widened, Kingspan wouldn't have to do a test and produce a test result for every single build-up that was going to be applied in the real world.
Well, it would help Kingspan insofar as they were part of the industry. I don't believe that it was the single reason for doing it. I mean, you just can't possibly test thousands and thousands of makeups, build-ups. It's just impractical.
Now, did you know whether the NHBC was discussing widening the scope of compliance with anybody other than you?
No, I wouldn't have been part. That was their business.
If you go a little bit further down page 1, under other points to note, you'll see item 6, test result on TRESPA panel disputed with BRE, timescale for resolution not known. Now, this was in relation to a large-scale fire test undertaken on the 19th of March 2040, the previous year, in other words, which the BRE had deemed a fail. That's right, isn't it?
I believe so.
And it says there that the resolution for the timescale of that was not known. In fact, do you accept there wasn't actually a timescale for resolution? The BRE had said that the test was a fail, and that was that, wasn't it?
No, I think at this stage, Tony was still in role. So I believe Tony was, I can't confess to seeing communications, but my understanding was that Tony was still contesting it with the BRE.
I see. Can we go to KIN 402538, please? 2538. This is your email of the 6th of March 2015, and in other words, the next day after this meeting, to Tony Millerchap and Ivor Meredith, among others, including Peter Wilson. And you say, "Dear all, I believe the actions stated are an accurate representation of what was agreed. The meeting lasted 2.5 hours, and there was a lot of circular conversation around test results, options to get test results, options of meeting the guidance note, and the fact that this is a cladding system issue, not just an insulation matter. Having said that, I had the distinct feeling that NHBC wanted to work with Kingspan in finding some better way of assessing whether specific systems meet the building regulations and achieve the necessary fire standards." Do you agree that you were at this point familiar with the issues of fire testing K15?
I was familiar with some issues, yes.
What issues were those?
Well, the issues around the importance of BS 8414 and it being a reliable test to use as evidence for the use of K15.
Why did you feel that the NHB wanted to work with Kingspan?
I think the purpose, from memory, the purpose of this first paragraph is to basically stand down the solicitors and say, look, we're going to resolve this amenably and around the table. I think that's why I wrote that in. It's in quite a deliberate way, I think I've written it.
Yes, and is that why you copied it, or rather sent it to Mr. Randall, T. Randall at Fenwick Elliott?
Yes. Although, or am I just replying to the people on the, I think I'm just replying to the note below, actually, which is I've replied to everybody.
Now, my question again, why did you think that the NHBC wanted to work with Kingspan? What was in it for them?
I don't know that there was. I didn't compute that there was anything in it for them. My feeling from the meeting was that they weren't saying, that's it, we no longer want to talk to Kingspan or discuss things with you. They wanted to find a way forward. They were looking for some information. I believe we could come up with a test program that would give them that. Was
there any discussion or any sense that you got during the discussions that the NHBC had a concern that they had approved the use of Kingspan K15 on many buildings in different configurations and needed their guarantees retrospectively validated in some way?
No, I would agree with the second part, I think, of what you said there, which was they wanted validation, but I wouldn't say they made us aware of concerns about what they'd done.
Right. And this wasn't, was it just that the NHBC were happy to talk to you because otherwise they were worried about being sued?
No, that wasn't even a topic of conversation. It was far more, let's sit down around the table and sort it. I mean, they were frustrated, and I was there, Ian Davis was there, and we were trying to get the troops, as it were, to, sort things out.
Yes, absolutely. I see that. And I just want to ask you, was there any sense in which you felt that you might be able to take advantage of the fact that things might get a bit difficult for the NHBC if it came out that they had approved or insured buildings with K15 on them, which did not correspond to the 2005 test build-up?
Absolutely not. No.
Right. Now, as you confirmed a few moments ago in your evidence, we know that you met the NHBC again on the 18th of June 2015, didn't you? And I'll show you the note. It's NHB 401136. It's an email sent by Ivor Meredith to Graham Perrior at the NHBC, copied to Dave White, Ian Davis, and others at the NHBC, as well as to you and to Adrian Pargeter. And notice that the solicitors have now fallen away. He says, "Hi Graham, further to today's meeting, I attach our list of projects that we're currently or have in the past had discussions on. Can I ask that you help us understand which projects are on your radar, which ones are NHBC BC services, and which are covered by your warranty? Also, most importantly, which are pre-2014. If you could help complete the columns highlighted in red, we would be very grateful. As discussed, if you can also advise from your list which jobs and cladding types you're shortly looking to make a negative decision on, and whether there is any additional information that will allow you to sign off the systems, we can look to see if it is possible to obtain this information." And then you can see underneath it a matrix across the page by way of a number of headings that Mr. Meredith has proposed that the NHBC should fill out. Do you see that?
I do.
Project number, date query received, etc. And then underneath that, he says, once you produce your summary report, if you could make this available to us so that we may concentrate on the more urgent construction types. From this matrix, headers copied above, you can also see projects of concern, jobs where we have received all the build information and we feel that this construction would fall outside of acceptability based on our learnings from the testing of the last 12 to 18 months. As we have not received or reviewed all the project information, this is not a conclusive list. Just pausing there, projects of concern. When did you yourself first learn that K15 was on many buildings where the build-up was, quotes, outside of acceptability, as Mr. Meredith puts it?
I don't recall this email, but it would suggest this would be the date where I would have been made aware of projects of concern.
Was this the first time on seeing Mr. Meredith's letter that you became aware that there were such projects of concern?
Well, this is a description he's using, I guess, for projects with the NHBC.
Are you saying that it was only on receipt of this email from Mr. Meredith that you learnt that there were projects where the construction would fall outside this acceptability based on what had been learnt in the testing in the previous 12 to 18 months?
Well, I don't recall the email, so it feels like it's the first time I'm reading it.
Right. Do you remember any discussion before this time, 18th of June 2015, about projects of concern such as those described here?
No, but what does ring true with me is the comment he makes above in the third paragraph, where he's talking about we were trying to satisfy them with information on systems. So this, where he says to sign off the systems, we can look the cladding types you're shortly to make a negative decision on. So they had cladding types where they were saying we're not sure about this, so we were trying to put those into the test program. That does ring true. I remember that.
Right. But if projects of concern hadn't rung a bell with you before you received this email, were you not immediately very concerned by what you read when you did get this email?
Well, again, I'm saying I don't recall reading this email.
Okay. I mean, you were managing director at the time. This email comes to you from Ivor Meredith. I've assumed that you would have read it and read it carefully at the time. Is that a wrong assumption on my part?
Well, I would say it's not to me. I'm copied in on it, which tends to mean it's there for information. I would, as I say, since I was CC'd, I would have scan read it, and what I'm seeing is things that relate back to the meeting that we'd had.
You're copied in on it because it's not to you, but you're copied in on it because the sender wanted you to read it. Is that a fair assumption, or is that a mistake?
I don't know that he's saying he wants me to read it. He's providing it for information.
Right. But for information, to get the information, you would have had to read the email. Yes.
That's correct.
So I'm proceeding on the basis that you did read the email. So my question again, when you did read the email, as I'm assuming you would have done, were you not concerned to read that there were projects of concern constructions would fall outside the scope of acceptability?
On the basis that projects of concern is in speech marks and it's around the meeting that I'd attended, then I think I've read into that I know what it's referring to, and I don't think it's projects of concern as you're making it out to be.
When you received this email, did you, as managing director, did you take any steps to investigate how it could have occurred that there were such projects of concern as described?
No, because at the time, I think by now, Tony Millichap had left, so this would fall under the technical team, which was led by Adrian Pargeter, and Ivor was obviously involved.
Did you have a discussion with Adrian Pargeter to make sure you knew what he was doing and he knew you were aware and was supervising what he was doing in this respect?
I'm sure we would have discussed it on an ongoing basis, yes, along with a number of other matters that were of importance.
And then a little lower down, you can see it says letter written. These are for projects where a letter of comfort has been written, as we have been advised that the project has already been signed off pre-Jan 2014, and all that is required to satisfy yourselves. Please note we have only written these when we are happy with the constructions that have been retrospectively confirmed to us, as we were not originally involved in the contract. Were you not concerned at the time when you read this, even if only for information, that Kingspan had been writing letters of comfort for the use of K15, which were not an independent expert desktop extrapolation, but simply Kingspan's own opinion?
Well, I can't remember the exact timing, but these letters of comfort was something that Adrian did bring to my attention, Adrian Pargeter. And again, I can't remember the timing, but he said, look, we've been doing this on occasion. I'm not sure that we are probably qualified to do that. And so, again, I can't remember the timing, but I think we stopped doing them some point in that year.
Right. Now, let's move to NHBC's technical guidance notes. This takes us into the summer of the following year, 2016. Can we go to KIN 402297? This is an email chain from the July of 2016. At the top of the email chain, you can see there's one from Gwyn Davis to Justin Davis and Philip Heath. If we go to page 1 and over to page 2, so bottom of page 1, you see that the third email in the chain is on the 8th of July 2016 from Adam Heath to Adrian Brazier, Adrian Pargeter, and others. In it, you can see that Adam Heath gives an update to numerous members of the team about his attendance at an NHBC facades conference, which happened on the previous day. If we go over to page 2, he says this: yesterday at the NHBC facades conference, at which the NHBC, DCLG, BRE and Exova presented, NHBC unveiled a new technical note which will be expanded in the future as more test evidence becomes available. Basically, they've taken all the test evidence available in the market featuring combustible insulation, 6 Kingspan, 2 Extratherm, 1 Celotex, to come up with 3 standard wall build-ups that they deem automatically compliant. They all have a number of caveats, and any deviation from one of these 3 wall types will still require supporting evidence in line with BCA TGN 18. And if we go back to page 1 and look a little bit higher up, we can see that Adrian Pargeter, who receives, among other people, he receives this email, sends this on to Gwyn Davis, Roy Weghorst, and John Garbett the same day, 8th July 2016. And he says this: gents, interesting development from NHBC. They've effectively eased the passage of compliance for a selection of combustible insulation brands, K15 included, in 3 select build-ups in high-rise rain screen applications. Overall, I feel this is good news, as it shows a shift in thinking and an acceptance of combustible insulation, and I am sure is a direct result of our testing and campaigning on this issue. However, the bad and annoying news that it also allows Celotex and Extratherm, after relatively little effort, to ride in on our shirt tails and will put significant pressure on us in these select applications. What had occurred, do you know, in the 12 months or so before July 2016 for the NHBC suddenly to start approving combustible insulation over 18 meters, as these 2 emails I've just shown you demonstrate?
Well, I think from the second page of this, I mean, they're referring to test data, aren't they? And so they've assessed test data. I think, were they referring to 6 Kingspan and some from Celotex, and I can't see it, but I think they're referring to test programs that must have been carried out by Extratherm, Celotex and Kingspan, and they've used that to come up with their views.
Yeah, yes, Mr. Burnley, I read that to you, and I can read that as well as you can. Really, I'm asking you, from your own knowledge and involvement as managing director of Kingspan at the time, are you able to add anything to what we can read on the page here?
No, I mean, it's the first time I think I've seen this. No, I mean, I'm reading it with you, so that's how I read it.
So far as Kingspan is concerned, do you know what testing Adrian Pargeter was referring to there?
I can't remember now.
And I think you confirmed this earlier, that none of the testing that Kingspan had done had involved a test using ACM panels.
That's right.
Are you able to tell us why the NHBC accepted ACM as a rain screen material as on one of the acceptable systems?
I'm not, no.
Right. What campaigning is being referred to there? What's the campaigning?
Just to go back to the previous question, now I know now it refers to the ACM panel, at least Euro Class B. And again, that's jogging my mind. This comes back to the point I made this morning about not pure PE core, but with a mineral content. So I'm sorry, what was your follow-up question?
Right, well, that's noted. My question was, perhaps I should just show you the email. If you go back to page 1, Adrian Pargeter's email refers to testing and campaigning. You see 3 lines up from the bottom of the text there. What is the campaigning that he's referring to there?
I don't know.
You don't know.
Oh, well, I mean, I can try and interpret it. I mean, the testing is the BS 8414 program. I assume by campaigning, he means the meetings that we've had with various people, including the NHBC, to explain the test results.
Given what you knew by this point, this is now July 60, about the fire testing of K15 historically, were you concerned that K15 would be used in build-ups that had not been tested and passed a test under BS 8414 to the criteria under BR 135, and for which no desktop study had been prepared?
So I don't think at this stage my understanding of the historical testing was any better than it had been. I was definitely forward-facing and was focused on the more recent testing and the programme that, what at the end of Tony's tenure and then Adrian's tenure was focused on, you know, specifically around things like the meetings that I had with the NHBC.
Now, I want to turn to the position that pertained after the Grenfell Tower fire on the 14th of June, 2017. And the first thing I want to ask you about is Kingspan's campaign. And the first document I want to show you in that is at KIN 402379. Now, this is an email from Adrian Pargeter to John Garbett, Peter Wilson, you and Richard Bromwich, dated the 11th of September, 2017. And if we can pick the chain up on the next page, page 2 at the top, we can see that this email, also to you as the primary recipient, says this: it seems NHBC are taking a very hard line over desktop studies, leaving virtually no room for manoeuvre. This will cause serious problems in current buildings getting approval and virtually demand a full-scale test on even minor variations, making anything insured through them practically impossible to get combustible insulation on. We have requested a face-to-face meeting, but they're not interested. Not heard if any other insurers are taking the same stance. Regards, Adrian. And then Peter Wilson asks a question. If you go to the bottom of page 1, he asks a question. Adrian, have they any position on the grade of cladding? And then Adrian Pargeter responds, hi, Peter, they are saying limited combustibility for insulation and cladding or tested solution. And then John Garbett responds, if you scroll up page 1 a bit, to Adrian Pargeter and others, including you, we need to show them that that could also fail and force them to a position of everything must be tested. They might compromise then. When is the RW/honeycomb test scheduled in? And then at the top of the page, Mr. Pargeter responds, hi, John, that is earmarked for Dubai, but had nothing concrete from Janet yet on dates. I called her this morning for an update, but no reply as yet. Now, you saw this email at the time. Can I assume that you read it?
You can, yes.
What was being planned? Do you know?
I'm sorry, what are you referring to when we're talking about something being planned?
Well, what was it that was planned? What was earmarked for Dubai, for example?
I think Adrian is referring, I think that is earmarked for Dubai is referring to when is the RW/honeycomb test scheduled in?
What was that?
That appears to be a honeycomb cladding panel. I assume RW refers to Rockwool.
Right. Is that what you understood at the time you received this email?
I don't recall, but that's what I would understand from it now.
And by honeycomb test, you say honeycomb is a cladding panel. Do you know what or which type of or brand of cladding panel that was a reference to?
No, I don't.
You saw, and I read to you, John Garbett's suggestion, we need to show them that that could also fail and force them into a position of everything must be tested. They might compromise then. And who is the they there?
Is he referring to the NHBC? Was that who was referred to in the emails below?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, then I assume he's referring to the NHBC.
Yes, I see. When it refers to, we need to show them that that could also fail and force them to a position of everything must be tested. What did you understand Mr. Garbett was suggesting by saying we need to show them that that could also fail?
Well, I believe it refers to the point I think I made previously about you can't possibly test everything. There are too many combinations to actually test all thicknesses, all combinations of frameworks and insulation thicknesses, fixing types, cladding panel types, thicknesses, colours. So you've got to try and find a way of being able to bridge test results with systems that would fall under those results and being able to be approved by them.
What could fail? What did you understand Mr. Garbett to be suggesting by a failure there? What is it that could fail, to your understanding?
Sorry, can we put the email back up again? I'm really sorry.
Absolutely. It's page 1 of the email we were on.
Yeah.
You need to show them that that could also fail and force them to a position of everything must be tested.
Can we go to the email below? I mean, from the top of my head, I don't know what he's talking to, but it's obviously about something referred to in an earlier email. Well,
certainly we can scroll back down again. We can do that. If we go backwards down the email chain, I'm happy to do that for you. The next one, the one to which this is a response, is below that. You can see Adrian Pargeter, 11th September 1737. Hi, Peter, they're saying limited combustibility for insulation and cladding or tested solution. That's a response to, have they any position on grade of cladding? That's a response to the one we started with, NHBC taking a hard line on desktop studies. So my question again, going back please, if we can, to page 1 and the second email down on that page. We need to show them that that could also fail and force them to a position of everything must be tested. What did you understand that was in that could also fail? I don't think I can tell you what that refers to. Let's move on then to KIN 30222252. This takes us slightly later in 2017. September 2017. These are the minutes of a KHIL stroke insulation meeting on Wednesday, 27th of September 2017. And you can see that it was at Tiel. Now, Tiel's in the Netherlands, isn't it?
It is, yes.
And what does KHIL stand for?
I believe it's Kingspan Holdings.
International?
Could be. Limited.
All right, doesn't matter. And you can see who was there: Peter Wilson, Jean Murter, Andrew Potter, you, Spencer Murter, John Garbett, Phil Heath, and some others. Gwyn Davis apologises for being absent. And if you scroll down a little bit down, you can come to page 2, please, under fire. Point 7 on page 2. It was agreed that in the event of fires in buildings with fibre, we need to point out that there is fibre in those buildings where we can prove it. Furthermore, we need to do all we can to dispel the myth of non-combustible. Regarding the likely UK tightening, it's imperative that we obtain a regime which allows pre-certification or a passed test. Now, the person there with responsibility to action what is discussed in the text I've just read to you is JG. Is that John Garbett?
Yes, it is. Yeah, I think so.
Can you explain the motivation behind the first sentence there? That you need to point out that there is fibre in those buildings where we can prove it. What was that about? What was the motivation behind having to do that?
Well, I can't recall exactly, but I would suggest it's meaning that, you know, that there are fires in buildings that have fibre insulation.
This designed to undermine public confidence, even in man-made mineral fibre as the insulation product?
I don't believe so, no.
What was the point of pointing out that there was fibre in those buildings?
Well, for that point, I think I just said, which is that, you know, you can have, if a system is designed badly, then you can still have fires.
What was the myth of non-combustible?
Not entirely sure I know what he means by that.
Right. I mean, did you understand at the time that non-combustible materials are just that, non-combustible? They don't burn.
Yeah, it's a measure from memory. I did some prep on this for the select committee. I mean, it's a reference to the organic content in the product.
Right. You did some prep on this for the select committee. We may have to come to that later on, I think, in your evidence. But did somebody give you a technical teach-in or a bit of training on what non-combustible, limited combustibility, combustible meant?
No, I mean, I understand what combustible and non-combustible means, and I understand how people interpret it.
At the time of this meeting, 27th of September 2017, so 9 months or so before you gave evidence to the Select Committee, what did you understand was meant by the myth of non-combustible that had to be dispelled?
I think, as I've just said, I don't quite understand what he means by the myth.
Right. When you were at this meeting, did this just pass you by and you left it you left it without understanding it, or did you actually ask at the meeting, well, what do you mean by myth of non-combustible? What's this about?
Well, I don't know whether the word myth was used in the meeting or whether it's been written by the person writing the minutes and the actions.
Do you recall a discussion at this meeting about dispelling the myth of non-combustible, or words to that effect, or the gist?
Well, I think what it's referring to is the linear route of non-combustibility versus using systems that have materials that aren't non-combustible.
In the last sentence, it's where it says, regarding the likely UK tightening, it's imperative we obtain a regime which allows pre-certification. What was meant by pre-certification?
I don't recall.
Or a passed test, it says. Was that a success under BS 8414 test?
I would assume so, yes.
You say you assume so. I mean, do you have no recollection of this meeting whatsoever? Well,
not this specific meeting. When was it? Can you remind me when it was? Can we go back to the top?
Yes, the 27th of September, 2017. It was in the wake of the fire, and you're discussing moving forwards. non-combustible, and a potential UK tightening. I'm putting to you the note because you were at the meeting, and I'm seeking to explore what else you can tell us about what happened at the meeting.
Well, yes, I mean, can I remember this specific meeting? I can't remember this specific meeting, I'm afraid.
Do you remember anything about somebody saying at the meeting that it was imperative that Kingspan obtain this regime?
Well, I remember the conversation about the fact that we were pushing for testing to BS 8414. I really can't recall what it means by pre-certification.
What was John Garbett tasked with doing as a result of these discussions?
Well, I can only go on what's written there.
Right, I see.
I mean, John Garbett reported to Peter Wilson as I did, so he didn't report to me.
Right. Well, maybe, but as you can see from the minute, JG had given the action as a result of what the text says. And my question was, what was he asked to do? Do you know?
Only insofar as what it says in that action point.
Do you mean by that you can read off the page as I can, or can you help me beyond that?
I can't. I mean, we're talking about a meeting that was 3.5 years ago, and I remember the time of that. I mean, of course, I remember this time because it was incredibly sensitive, but I don't remember, other than what it says on that paper there, I can't go into any more detail about what John was requested to go and do.
Standing back from the detail and forgetting the notes of the minute, cast your mind back. It's late September. The fire at Grenfell Tower had happened only a handful of months before that. You have a meeting with all these top brass in Holland, right? What was the big thing that Kingspan needed to do in relation to K15?
Well, stepping back from the detail, this was a regular monthly business review meeting. So where all of the regional managing directors would be going through their business results for the previous month. And then the departmental heads would then go through on a divisional basis, things that they were working on. And that's clearly when we had a discussion about fire, that is the action that was taken down for John Garbett. So this is, I mean, there were other things going on around K15, not necessarily discussed in this meeting.
Right. You see, it doesn't sound as if what's discussed under paragraph 7 fire here left much of an impression on you. Is that really right?
Well, no, that's not right. I mean, we're referring to a meeting that was 3.5 years ago. At that time, I was specifically focused on K15, and I was working on a great deal of things, or certainly helping Adrian, and there was lots going on. This is something specific here that was falling onto John Garbett.
Yes, but you were managing director at the time. We can see that the text of this is written in pretty urgent and strident terms. We need to do all we can to dispel the myth non-combustible. It's imperative that we obtain a regime which allows pre-certification, which is why I asked the question, do you not have any recollection at all about what it really was that Kingspan had to do in relation to K15 at this point, a month or so, 2 months or so after the Grenfell Tower fire?
But this is specifically, I mean, you're referring to K15, but this is talking about fibre and non-combustible. Whereas, and this was not my meeting, I was attending a meeting. I think this meeting is chaired by, the KHIL meetings were chaired by Peter Wilson. So I'm there as an attendee, not as the person chairing the meeting.
Well, you're there because you're the managing director. Are you seriously telling us that you can remember nothing about this meeting in respect of K15 and fire beyond what is written in this minute?
I can tell you that in that meeting there, I can't tell you what was discussed about K15. I can imagine, but I'm not, it's not documented. You're trying to link K15 with an action for John Garbett, and I'm saying I can't do that.
Do you agree that after the Grenfell Tower fire, Kingspan launched a campaign to lobby the government in relation to the use of combustible materials on high-rise buildings?
I'm sorry, you broke up at the start of that sentence. Could you just repeat it again for me, please?
Yes, of course. Do you agree that after the Grenfell Tower fire, Kingspan launched a campaign to lobby government in relation to the use of combustible materials on high-rise buildings?
Yeah, I've seen evidence to that effect.
Do you remember that Kingspan retained the services of the Murray Group, who are a PR firm, I believe?
I know they use Murray. Did they use it for that as well? Yes, probably. They were their external affairs agency.
What about Portland Communications? Does that ring a bell with you?
I believe they were involved as well, yes.
What about Grayling, another PR firm? Does that ring a bell with you?
Grayling were involved, yes.
Did you yourself play any part in the decision to mount a political engagement strategy after the Grenfell Tower fire?
I wouldn't have said I played a part in it. No, I was aware that it was going on.
Right. What was Kingspan's goal in mounting such a political engagement plan?
My understanding is that the belief was that we wanted to get systems used in facades tested to BS 8414 as a way of proving that people could be confident in the use of that system.
Whose ultimate decision was it to launch the political engagement plan?
I'm not entirely sure.
Let's look at some documents. KIN 408120. Now, this is a document which seems to be dated August 2017 from the file data, although we can't see that it actually bears an express date. And it's called Kingspan Political Engagement Plan. Have you seen this document before?
I don't think so.
So am I to take it that this right now is the first time you've ever seen this document?
I don't know. I can't recall.
Right.
I remember there was a plan produced. I didn't know that it was necessarily a document.
Right. Well, Political Engagement Plan appears to be the name of the campaign that was waged by Kingspan to lobby government. Do you accept that?
No, I mean, I think this was a proposal by an external company. I don't think this was our plan. I think this was proposed.
Indeed, and you are right that it was an external company. It seems to have been drafted by a company called Portland.
Okay.
And they are a PR. Well, you tell me, what was Portland's relationship with Kingspan in late summer 2017, Mr. Burnley?
Well, I'm not sure that we had a relationship with them. I certainly didn't. I wasn't familiar with them. I think they were. I think there was a brief pulled together of some engagement that we wanted to try to do, and they were one of the companies that engaged to see if they could do that work.
Right. Now, let's look a little further into the document and see if you're familiar either with it or with what it's saying. If we go to the second page, please, page 2, we can see in red letters, overview. And then it says this, and I'll read it to you. It's time to get our message out to the people that matter. In the first instance, initial outreach should be made by Kingspan and not by Portland. It looks better. We will draft letters and emails on your behalf. We will ensure each one is tailored to the recipient, and we will prepare you adequately for each and every meeting that you are granted. Portland will be the engine room. We must be realistic, though. Some people will not want to meet you and they will not want to be lobbied. But there is still immeasurable value in getting Kingspan's manifesto in front of these decision makers. We want them to read it. We need them to read it. And that's why it's vital that our messages are punchy, memorable, and easy to understand. Following initial contact, there'll be a program of follow-ups, and that's where we hope to use our network of contacts to nudge where appropriate. And while we cannot promise you access, we will pull every string to ensure that your messages reach the key people. Finally, there is still a discussion to be had about approaching the public inquiry. We don't know the inquiry's terms of reference, and we don't know if Kingspan will be asked to give evidence. Now, first of all, is the text that I've just read to you something that you have only just seen today, now, for the very first time?
I can't recall, but it's clearly not written by Kingspan.
Well, that may be a matter of debate, but it appears to be written by Portland. I'll grant you that. Do you know? Can you tell us how this document came to be generated?
My vague recollection is that this was probably the document used by Portland in a pitch around the brief for some work that Kingspan wanted doing.
Were you involved in going out into the PR market and identifying PR firms, comms firms, to be able to assist Kingspan with its manifesto, for want of a better word?
No, I wasn't. That's definitely not one of my areas of expertise.
Whose was it?
I think it was done by people from both the insulation business and the panels business. And from the insulation business, I think it would have been John Garbett.
Right. Did you yourself have any discussions with John Garbett or anybody else within Kingspan about retaining the services of external PR and communications consultants?
No, I'm pretty sure I didn't.
Right. I see. Well, let me see how far we go with this document. In the first sentence, you see that Portland say it's time to get the message out to the people that matter. And then you see references later to the decision makers and key people. Can you help me? Who were they? Who were these people that matter?
I can only assume they're referring to members of Parliament and anybody else that they were going to identify as key stakeholders.
As a document, do you agree, just on the basis of the overview, that this was a plan being proposed to Kingspan to obtain access to and to exert influence over individuals in a position to exercise decision-making powers, which had been entrusted to them in the public interest?
No, I think the purpose of the work that we were wanting done was to get us in front of people to try to put our point of view forward.
All right. Let's go to page 3. Here is a list of names, all of which have MP after them. Do you know how this list came to be compiled? Starts with Nigel Adams, the Conservative member for Selby and Ainsty, and goes down through a list of names, and includes in the middle, as you can see, Kevin Hollinrake, the Conservative member for Thirsk and Malton, as well as others.
I can't, but what I'm seeing is there's a number of MPs who have, where there are Kingspan plants within their constituency, and then it looks like some of the others are referred to at the bottom with other sort of roles in other committees and groups of people.
Indeed, it's pretty targeted, actually, as you identify. The MPs selected are cross-party and identified precisely because there's a Kingspan site within the constituency. Yes.
Yeah, that would appear to be the case. Yes.
Yes. And Kevin Hollinrake has a double asterisk because, as you can see at the foot of the screen, he was a member of the DCLG Select Committee.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, if you go to page 4, you can see Group 2, key decision makers. And here are some very familiar names. I needn't read them out, but they include the Secretary of State for Communities and Local Government, Home Secretary, Dame Judith Hackett herself. And the action notes, if you look at the bottom, Portland to draft letter requesting a meeting, Kingspan to approve and send, Portland to provide follow-up and to secure meetings, Portland to provide briefing notes ahead of meetings. Now, the document goes on in this sort of vein, but I just want to show you an email from Grayling to Kingspan at KIN 408117. And if you look at the second email down, it's an email dated the 5th of February 2018 to Siobhan Dwyer, John Garbutt, Mark Harris, and Tony Ryan from a gentleman at Grayling called Thomas Annerley. That's how I think you pronounce it. And if you go to the text, he says, please find attached an updated letter to Clive Betts, a key messaging document and stakeholder list, which details next actions. Now, regarding the key messaging document, it would be very helpful if you could let us know of any feedback, technical mistakes we might have made, and if you could provide any proof points to support the argumentation. One of the key arguments that we need to win with political stakeholders is that combustible materials are no more dangerous than non-combustible materials when improperly installed. We've attempted to provide some lines on this, but feel the argument needs to be stronger. Regarding the stakeholder list, we've used the Portland one as the basis, but added some more MPs, tiered them, and added some next steps. The next steps are also tiered by urgency. If you could have a look at the Kingspan Actions column, and in particular send us any further feedback on the meetings you've already held, that would be most appreciated. We will then collate everything together. You will see that there is an officials tab and a third party tab for compiling names to add to these now. And just pausing there, do you remember whether Grayling replaced Portland, or maybe Portland didn't get the job, but Grayling did? How did it work? Do you remember?
I don't know. I don't recall.
Right. If we go to KIN 4088118 in native form, please, we can see the spreadsheet that Grayling had prepared. KIN 4088118. And yes, there it is. And you can see at the very top, there are tier number. At the very top, there is a list across the page: the name, party position, Kingspan site, emails, follow-ups, Grayling action, Kingspan action, etc. And then you can see the list of names in the second column from the left, and their tiering in the column on the left, and their position, respectively. And have you ever seen this document before?
I don't believe so, no.
Right. If we look at it just at a glance, you can see the efforts that have been made to contact MPs and stakeholders by telephone, by email, and by letter, to follow up with them, to get meetings with them, basically a lobbying exercise. Do you remember yourself that this exercise had taken place or was taking place?
I mean, I was aware of something going on, but just looking at, as I heard yesterday, there appears to have been quite a significant amount of things going on without my knowledge.
Yes. You say I was aware of something going on. Let's just look a little bit more closely at that. Can I ask you to go to KIN 3022667, please? This is an email dated the 23rd of January 2018 from Mark Harris to a number of people at Kingspan, including Adrian Pargeter and you. The subject is Kevin Hollin-Rake dinner. Attachments, Westminster, January 2018. Now, Kevin Hollin-Rake, as we saw from that list in the Portland Communications list, was an MP, yes?
Yes, correct.
And Mark Harris writes as follows: Hi, Jim. Now, we think we know who it went to, but that doesn't matter. As requested, please find attached a copy of the slides that you missed last week. It was a great pleasure to have dinner with you and the other MPs. We found the debate very informative, and in particular, it helped to refocus our effort away from concentrating purely on the technical arguments for high-performance combustible containing facades, to focusing on getting the public to understand the full range of benefits of our large-scale tested systems. Hopefully, our passion and genuine belief in the acceptability and the equivalence in performance of our facade systems to those containing so-called non-combustible materials came through loud and clear. Our argument, in a nutshell, boils down to the necessity to test all facade systems to the large-scale test BS8414, a very robust test methodology that has stood the test of time and clearly demonstrated the failure of the system used on Grenfell Tower in the BRE tests done on behalf of DCLG. Systems that pass the test are safe, systems that don't are not, irrespective of whether the system contains combustible material or not. Please let me know if you have any further questions. Kind regards, Mark. Now, that dinner, were you there?
Yes, I was.
You were. Where did it take place?
It was at the House of Parliament.
How many MPs were present?
I think there were 2 or possibly 3. I think it's in one of my witness statements. I think I recalled the dinner and made comment to who I thought was there.
Who were they?
The 2 that I can recall being there were Kevin Hollinrake and I believe who this is addressed to, Jim Shannon.
Jim Shannon. And who identified those particular MPs as the MPs with whom dinner should be had?
I don't know.
How did you get access to that group of MPs?
I don't know.
Who arranged access to those MPs?
Again, I don't know. I was just invited along to the dinner.
Who invited you along to the dinner?
I think it was Mark Harris and Tony Ryan.
Did it come as a surprise to you that you were being invited to a dinner with MPs at the House of Commons?
Yes, it was. It wasn't something I was familiar with doing.
When you were invited by Mark Harris to go to this dinner, did you ask him what it was for?
I think he probably told me and just explained it was to talk about full-scale testing.
Why would you want to be talking to MPs about full-scale testing, Mr. Burnley?
Well, to just discuss our point of view and explain what we thought was the validity of full-scale testing.
Who paid for the dinner?
Well, I don't know. I assume we did.
Yeah.
I don't know, is the truth, actually.
Who from Kingspan other than you were present?
There was myself, Adrian Pargeter, Mark Harris, and I can't remember whether Tony Ryan was there or not. I think he may have been.
Did anyone from Kingspan address these MPs?
I think Mark Harris did. I can remember he showed a video and spoke briefly.
He showed them a video. Did he show them anything else?
Not that I recall.
What was the video of?
I think it was just to show them what a BS8414 test looked like.
Was it a BS8414 test done by Kingspan, or was it any 8414?
Well, I'm pretty sure it would have been one of ours because we would have been able to show one that we'd done, but I think it was more about showing the robustness of the test. You know, it was to show that it wasn't a lab scale test. It was a full, you know, it's a built wall being tested.
Right. At that stage, did you know, just think about this, did you know by that stage that the K15 being sold, which had been sold for a number of years, had failed ever to obtain a pass to a test under BS8414?
That point. Yes, no, I'm sure I must have done.
You didn't tell the MPs that, did you?
But testing products is any part of a product development process.
You were trumpeting the virtues, weren't you, at this dinner of the BS8414 test, when you knew by this point that for more than a decade, K15 had been sold without that product having achieved a pass to a test under BS8414?
I'm not sure at that stage I did know that, no.
You said you had a moment ago.
I said I had what, sorry?
I thought you told us earlier that by that stage, you must have known that K15, the K15 being sold, was one that had not passed an 8414.
I don't know. Show me what I can't remember saying that.
Are you able to explain why, even if you didn't know by that point, are you able to explain why others at that meeting, who had the means at the very least to that knowledge, I would suggest, did not tell those MPs that for more than a decade K15 had been sold without K15 being sold, having ever achieved a pass under BS 8414?
No, I can't answer that.
Can you tell us when this Damascene moment of yours came, when you realized that BS 8414 was the only safe test?
Well, I don't think it was a moment for me. It was. I mean, I think when we were talking to the NHBC, the conversations I'd had with Tony Millichap and then with Adrian Pargeter, it became clear that 8414 was a clear way of providing evidence that a system could pass the building regulations. I don't know if it was a specific moment. It was clearly the way of providing evidence to people that it could meet the building regulations.
When did you have that realization? When did it become clear, in your words, that 8414 was a clear way of providing evidence that a system could pass the building regulations?
I mean, I can't give you an exact date.
This dinner, it was a private dinner, wasn't it, I imagine?
Yes, insofar as it was in a room and there weren't other people passing around us.
Was anybody there to take a record of what was said, what passed between you and these MPs?
I don't believe there were minutes taken, no.
Do you know why that is?
No, I can't answer that.
Would it be fair to describe this dinner as part of a plan by Kingspan to seek political support for your attack on the linear route to compliance?
No, I don't believe so. I think we were trying to demonstrate the robustness of BS 8414.
To MPs?
To the people present. I don't think there were just MPs present. I can't remember. I honestly can't remember who else was there.
Well, this is a dinner, and you told us that there were 3 MPs present. Let's just be clear. Who else was present? Was anybody else present? There were the people from Kingspan, the 3 MPs. Was anybody else present?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
No. So I put the question again. Would it be fair to describe this dinner as, or part of, a plan by Kingspan to seek political support for your attack on the linear route to compliance?
No, I don't believe it would be fair to say that, no.
So what was the purpose of this dinner?
To explain the robustness of BS 8414 and that full-scale testing was a route that we believed could show that systems could be used to meet the building regulations.
No, that was the case message you wanted to get across. My question was, what was the purpose of this dinner? This dinner with these MPs?
Exactly what I've just said. That's what I went along with as the understanding.
Why with MPs? What was the purpose of having a dinner with MPs, Mr. Burnley?
For the exact reason I've just said.
To seek political support. Not scientific support, not popular support, political support. That's right, isn't it?
Well, it's not the reason that I was given.
What reason were you given?
Because we were trying to push the robustness of the British Standard test, and that all systems that were going to be used should be tested on a full-scale test.
The truth is, isn't it, is this is Kingspan accessing political power in order to seek to improve its own commercial position in the aftermath of the Grenfell Tower fire. That's the reality, isn't it?
No, I don't agree with that.
Mr. Chairman, is that a convenient moment for the break?
Yes, I think it is. Well, we'll have a short break now, Mr. Burnley. We'll come back at 3:30, please. And as I said to you on many occasions now, please don't talk to anyone about your evidence or anything relating to it over the break. All right?
Yeah, I understand.
3:30 then. Thank you very much. Welcome back, everyone. We're going to continue now with Mr. Burnley's evidence. Mr. Burnley, I hope you can see me and hear me. Can you?
Yes, I can.
Thank you very much. Anything you need to raise before we carry on?
No, I'm fine to keep going.
Right. Thank you very much. Well, then, when you're ready, Mr. Millett.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. I'm just going back to the Kevin Hollinrake dinner in January 2018, Mr. Burnley. You've established who was there from Kingspan and who the MPs were, more or less. Was there anybody else there at all?
Well, I think there was, but I can't remember who they were. That's why I think I was a little bit vague when I answered before. There wasn't just Mr. Shannon and Mr. Hollinrake. There was definitely at least one other person that wasn't a Kingspan employee.
And was that other person an MP? Do you remember?
I wish I could remember.
Let me see if I can. I don't want to suggest things, but
No.
Let me see if I can help. Was that person from a government department?
I think it was a lady.
A lady. Right.
In fact, I'm sure it was a lady.
Right.
I know when I prepared before Christmas, I tried to look at stuff that I'd been provided with by Kingspan, but there was no record of any of it. So I'm going on memory.
Right. Was a gentleman called Brian Martin there?
I don't recall, so no.
What about a gentleman called Bob Ledson? Does that name ring a bell?
No.
What about a gentleman called Neil O'Connor?
No, definitely not. Doesn't ring any bells.
Lady, all right. I'd like then to move to a different topic. A little bit later in March 2018, KIN 404637. This is an email chain from March 2018, early March 2018. I'll just wait for it to be displayed. And you can see from the top of the email chain on the screen in front of you that it ends with an email from John Garbutt to Mark Harris and Adrian Pargeter on the 5th of March 2018. Can we go please to page 3? The email at the foot of the page, or halfway down the page, is the 2nd of March 2018 from Mark Harris to Adrian Pargeter, John Garbutt and Gilbert McCarthy and others. And it's dated the 2nd of March 2018, and the subject is Ulster Test stroke MHCLG Select Committee Lobbying. Now, I must be very clear with you, Mr. Burnley. You were not copied in on any of the emails in this chain. Have you seen it before?
I don't believe so, no.
Right. Did you not see this when you were preparing your witness statements? Or preparing?
No, I really don't think so.
Right. Let's see how we go. It's right, isn't it, that Gilbert McCarthy is the current managing director of Kingspan Group's insulated panels business in the UK?
Yes, yeah, broader geography, I think. I think he has more, but certainly as part of his role, yes.
UK, Ireland, Western Europe and Australia, in fact, I think.
Okay, yeah, that's correct.
And Mark Harris, at that time, was he still the divisional building technology director at Kingspan?
Kingspan Panels, I believe he was in the Kingspan Panels business. Yes.
Yes. And he starts the email by saying, it's clear that Kevin Hollinrake is still pretty lukewarm about our draft letter stroke arguments to address MHCLG Select Committee and MP concerns. Now, just pausing there, Mr. Burnley, can you help us about what the draft letter is to which Mr. Harris is referring there?
No, I can't.
Right. Do you remember whether Kevin Hollinrake was asked to assist in the preparation of or giving in comments on a draft letter or draft set of arguments to be directed at the MHCLG?
No, I would doubt it.
Right. The major evidence gap going on with the text of this, the major evidence gap is his concern about fire spread with combustibles, quotes unquotes, in relation to poor installation. He seems to believe that poor installation is a major problem with combustible systems, still in quotes, but not with non-combustible, in quotes. In other words, he and members of the Select Committee need to see evidence to persuade them that poor installation is an issue with both systems. Following discussion with Roy, Tony and Adam, I have a simple proposal that could address this issue and give us the evidence we need to demonstrate that non-combustible systems are not as fail-safe as many presume. Now, just pausing there, the case to demonstrate non-combustible systems are not as fail-safe as many presume, that was, wasn't it, the argument, the case that you wanted to get across to Kevin Hollinrake and the others at the dinner in January? Is that right?
No, we were trying to get over the point that we should test all systems, irrespective of the linear route, to BS 8414.
Yes, but isn't demonstrating that non-combustible systems are not as fail-safe as many presume the other side of the same coin?
I don't think it is, no. I think it's, well, you could say it's half full, half empty, but I think it's more about anything that passes BS 8414 is a system that can be used.
Going on, one, gather evidence to demonstrate that fire spread in cavities is potentially dangerous, irrespective of cladding type. A good example is the statement in BR 135, and then it's set out there. Further, ISO 13785 Part 1 tests at Ulster University to demonstrate similar performance of K15 versus RW, rock wool, when tested without cavity barriers. This would involve a repeat of the original tests. A 100 millimeters K15 with A2 ACM without cavity barriers and flashing at top of rig, and 2 duo rock with A2 ACM as above. There's little doubt that flames will appear at the top of the rig during the test, and the time differential between K15, if we can turn the page, between K15 and duo rock may not be significant. I think this evidence will be critically important in persuading Kevin Hollinrake to become an advocate of our view, and very useful in lobbying activities elsewhere to demonstrate that, first bullet point, so-called deemed to satisfy systems can have rapid fire spread if cavities are not protected, for example, as a result of poor installation. Second bullet point, fire spread in cavities is similar with MMMF, that's man-made mineral fiber, and K15, i.e. lack of cavity barriers in high-performance rigid insulation systems that pass BR 135 requirements is not an enhanced risk versus non-combustible. The critical issue is the correct design and installation of all systems. I understand you have testing planned in Ulster week commencing 12th March. I strongly recommend that this additional testing is squeezed into the programme if at all possible. So it looks as if, and I'm taking it that you hadn't seen this email before, there was a plan to compare Rockwool and K15 when tested without cavity barriers to demonstrate that fire spread can be similar. That's what it appears from this email, among other things. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, that's that second bullet point, I think, isn't it?
Yes. Were you aware at the time, not having seen this email specifically, but were you aware at the time of the proposals set out in this email?
No.
Is it right that Adrian Pargeter still reported to you at this time, early March 2018?
Yes, he did, yeah.
Did Adrian Pargeter discuss the proposals set out in this email with you at all?
He didn't discuss these proposals. I mean, we certainly, in separate conversations, would have talked about the medium-scale tests that were on the other page that Ulster University were doing, because we did a large amount of work to try to see if they could be used. So the 13785, I think it's at the bottom of the previous page, yes, to see if they could be used as an indicator of whether systems would pass BS 8414.
I see. So you had conversations with Adrian Pargeter about the Ulster University test, but nothing else in this email. Is that right?
I mean, it's the first time I've seen it, so definitely didn't talk about point one. I was aware of the work. So Adrian and I would have talked about work that was going on at Ulster University, but not specifically those repeats of original tests.
Can you explain why Adrian Pargeter only discussed part of, and not all of, the matters set out in this email with you?
No, I can't.
Right. Was that a failure on his part to report to you fully?
I don't think so. I think we would have been talking about things that he felt would have been important and that I needed to know about.
Why did you not need to know about everything in this email, particularly the effort to demonstrate that non-combustible systems are not as fail-safe as many presume?
I can't answer that question.
Now, if we could scroll up, please, to page 2 in this email run. I think probably started at the bottom of page 1. We can see an email on the 4th of March 2018 from John Garbett, and at 8:02 or 22:10, and he says, and this is to Adrian Pargeter again, as well as others, Mark Harris, Roy Weghorst, and Tony Ryan. Looking at the videos of the original test, the flames only got as high as the cavity barrier in the A2/PF tests. So I think you're going to need to create some draw to get the flames to get above the barrier or rig. So we will get a greater draw with narrower gaps or wider gaps between panels. Question. Clearly the flashing will have to be absent. Would we be better using FR or A2 for this test, Roy? Which would give the most fuel to get the flames up there? And we can see Mark Harris responds to this if we scroll up further into page 1. 5th of March, next day. Hi, John. I think we definitely have to use the A2 ACM. The important message of this test could be that you can get excessive fire spreading cavities in rain screens that are compliant with the linear route, thereby demonstrating the importance of installing cavity barriers and testing the full system to demonstrate they work in the actual rain screen buildup. In addition, it demonstrates that getting the installation right is just as important with so-called non-combustible straight limited combustible systems as it is with combustible systems that pass BS 8414. Again, my question is, did you know that this discussion along the lines set out in the Garbett-Harris exchange I've just read to you was going on at the time?
No, I don't believe so.
Was that not a topic that you should have been involved in?
I don't know. Having just seen it, I don't know. I don't think so.
Well, was this not part of planning testing to demonstrate that you can get excessive fire spreading cavities even where the structure is compliant with the linear route, or even where the products used are compliant with the linear route, I should say?
Well, there was concern within Kingspan that products that could be used through the compliant linear route could actually fail an 8414 test.
Yes, and that's what this is talking about, and obtaining evidence to be able to demonstrate that fact to the MHCLG, no?
It looks that way, but I mean, I'm not sure I would have added much credence to the conversation.
No, maybe not, Mr. Burnley, but was this not within your sphere of responsibility as managing director, with Mr. Pargeter reporting to you?
Well, that's a difficult question to answer. Is it of interest to me? Yes.
Why were you left out of the loop? Do you know?
No.
Do you agree with me that you should not have been left out of the loop, but should at least have been copied in on this for information, if only for information?
Possibly, yeah, possibly.
Well, you see, you were at the dinner with Kevin Hollinrake, and the topic of this email run is MHCLG Select Committee lobbying. Can you explain why you were not kept in the loop, given the topic?
Well, I don't see the connection between this and the dinner that we had with the MPs.
The connection is that the case message is the same. Because so-called non-combustibles when used in a 8414 test, when used in the 8414 test, that test may fail. Your case is that everything should be tested. That's the case you wanted to get across to Mr. Hollinrake, and that's the same case I'm suggesting to you that Mr. Garbett and Mr. Harris are discussing to be put across to the MHCLG.
No, that's a fair point.
Sorry?
That is a fair point.
Yes, and as a fair point, can you explain why it was that you were kept out of this loop?
No, I can't.
Now, I want to ask you about a second email chain, this time in April 2018, KIN 404658. What comes up on the screen is the last email in that chain, as is always the case. And it ends, as you can see, with an email from Adrian Pargeter to Adrian Brazier and Adam Heath on the 13th of April 2018. And the title, the subject, is Linear Route Action Plan. And if you go to page 4, we can see at the bottom of that page an email from Mark Harris to John Garbett, Adrian Pargeter, Nick Jenkins of Booth Murie and others, copied to Jean Murtagh and Gilbert McCarthy. And I'll show you some of this. But again, I should make it very clear to you, you are not copied in on these emails at all, and indeed are not cited on them, you're not sent them. In this email, Mark Harris refers to a meeting which has taken place to look at issues relating to the linear route. And he says this: the object of the discussion was to look closely at potential issues related to the use of the linear route to compliance. In other words, provide evidence to demonstrate that the linear route approach has weaknesses and full-scale testing is essential for all systems. We reviewed evidence currently available and discussed how we can generate evidence for use in both the political arena and with the Hackett Review team. Now, again, do you accept that was the basic case message that we saw you wanted to impart to the MPs at the Kevin Hollinrake dinner back in January?
It's linked to the message. I mean, the message, I have to maintain my vivid memory recollection of that dinner was around the robustness of 8414 testing.
Right. But you can see that they're linked.
They are linked, without a doubt, yeah.
Yes. And then in fact, we can see that if we look on in the email, if you go to over the page, notes and actions as follows, and over the page to page 5. 1, data from failed BS8414 tests. We are aware of at least 2 BS8414 tests comprising only non-limited combustible materials that have failed to meet BR135 criteria. Key reasons for the failures are believed to be associated with the A2 cassette type / robustness / geometry and/or the combustibility of the mineral fiber insulation system, binder content / presence of polyethylene adhered aluminium foil. However, we do not have access to the reports or any rights to make this information public. Actions: test Aluco panel A2 material in bomb calorimeter to determine heat release, NJ has sample. Also test Vitricor A2 honeycomb in bomb calorimeter. This testing is for information only at this stage. And then underneath that, item 2, BS8414 test proposal, Dubai. Now this is very important. I wanted you to focus on this very closely. KIL has 3 upcoming slots at Exova in Dubai. It has agreed to make a slot on 10th May available for a test on a system comprised of minerals, quotes, deemed to satisfy, unquotes, BR135. Discussion during the meeting identified the following test proposal for a configuration that has the potential to fail BR135 criteria. A, BS8414 Part 2. B, MMMF, that's man-made mineral fiber. Duo slab insulation. 3, 38 millimeters ventilated cavity. D, Aluco bond A2 ACM cassettes with weak structural specification. E, cavity barriers included. Actions: NJ to create drawing of A2 cassette assembly that could perform poorly. Also arrange fabrication. Detailed test specification to be developed and agreed by all. And then there's something about arrangement of tests and budgets. Now, just looking at that, the plan there was that the build-up that Kingspan were going to test in Dubai at that point was to show problems with deemed to satisfy systems, in other words, the linear route. And to do that, they would use Rockwool, Duo slab, and Aluco bond A2 ACM cassettes. I'm putting to you that as a fair summary of what the proposal is. Now, my question is, although you weren't copied into this email chain, were you aware at this point, early to mid-April 2018, of this linear route testing being proposed?
No, yeah, I was aware that we were doing a test. Literally, as it says there, on a system comprised of materials that were deemed to satisfy, i.e., let's do a test on a builder of materials that could be picked by a designer and then installed on a building. That was my understanding.
Right, now let's just examine that. Now, when did you first come by that understanding, that was what was proposed?
I mean, I can't tell you exactly. It was around this time. I mean, it was, around the time of this test being done. The test was due in May, so it would have been April, May time.
Right, let's be a bit more specific. Before this email chain was generated, so between the 9th and the 13th of April 2018, did anybody have a conversation with you about a proposed test to take place in Dubai along the lines of that described in paragraph 2 of the email in front of you on the screen?
It was discussed with me in a meeting, I'm sure, but it wasn't specifically, I need to tell you about this test. It would have been as part of this is the upcoming test program. These are what we've got set up to be tested, and this would have been one of those tests.
Right. Who told you about the test program and this test as part of that test program?
Well, I don't recall, but it would have been either Adrian, Pargeter, or John Garbutt.
And did they show you any documents relating to the proposal?
No, they wouldn't have done that.
What was the context in which they told you about the proposed Dubai test?
Well, insofar as I would have known that there would have been slots booked to carry out tests in our testing program, and it would have been talked about this as being one of those slots.
Were they telling you this to keep you in the loop, in other words, for information, or were they telling you this to get your approval?
No, they were telling me to keep me in the loop because it was coming out of the Insulation UK budget, I think, from memory.
And was that something over which you had ultimate control?
I wouldn't have said so particularly.
Well, it's not a question of particularly. I mean, either you did or you didn't. Did you?
Well, I wasn't making the decisions on what the test. I was discussing with Peter Wilson the number of slots that we had. Peter was signing off the cost, but I wasn't responsible for picking the makeup of the systems that were being tested.
Did anybody tell you, when they did tell you about this, what the makeup of the test in Dubai was proposed to be?
I can't recall. If they did, they wouldn't have gone into great detail.
Did anybody tell you, regardless of the detail, that the test being proposed for the linear route testing, as we see as the subject matter of this email, was to contain certain deliberate design imperfections?
No, I don't believe that's the case.
And although you were told, you say, about this proposed test, we can see that you're not copied in on this email, and indeed none of the emails that are generated in April on this subject. Why was that?
I can't explain that.
Should you have been copied in on it, even if only for information?
I think some of the detail there, having read that for the first time, it poses, I mean, I'd like to read it again in more detail, but it does pose some questions, doesn't it?
It certainly does. Whether you're the right person to answer them or not is another matter. My question is a broader one. Given the questions that this email poses, can you explain why somebody made a decision not to copy you in on it?
No, I can't.
Let's look at the last paragraph, please. On page 6. I'll skip forward to that. I thought we had an extremely useful session this morning with actions that could deliver some very valuable evidence to support the need for full-scale testing of all systems and demonstrate the materials that are deemed to satisfy the linear route do not automatically beat BR135 criteria when tested full-scale to BS 8414. That's precisely the point, isn't it, in which you have been involved, with which you have been involved in seeking to have the dinner with Kelvin Hollingray.
No, I still don't believe that's the case. I believe the reason for the dinner was to talk about the robustness of 8414, because at that stage, I don't think we felt they understood what the test looked like or how significant a test it was.
Right. Now, again, we've gone over old ground a little bit already on establishing the link between the subject matter of the dinner and the subject matter of these emails. Looking at the topic there, do you accept that this is something that you should have been kept in the loop on?
I think I should have been provided with more information than I clearly had.
Right. Okay. Let's go up the email chain the next day. Look at it. Look a little bit more. 10th of April 2018. If we go to page 3, we can see that there's an email from Nick Jenkins, 10th of April 2018, to Mark Harris. And he starts by saying, okay, this represents a real challenge. However, we made some good progress today. And just above the foot of the page, BS 8414 test proposal Dubai. To utilize the test slot booked by KL on 10th May available for a test on a system comprised of materials deemed to satisfy BR135. AP has advised we need to get the full set of panels and components to Pembridge to be packed for air freight to Dubai by the end of the day on Friday, 30th of April this week. This represents a challenge, but is not impossible. And then A, drawings preparation started today. And then if you continue over the page, B has some Maluka Bond A2 in stock. C is about Rockwool in stock at Pembridge. D is about Siderize, and it says this: Siderize have recommended we use the EnviroGraph cavity barrier products. These meet regs requirements, but their performance is expected to be poor. We will not utilize panel inserts, but attempt to cut the cavity barriers to suit the geometry of the panels. This will further weaken their performance. The panel system as drawn is expected to perform badly, in spite of being A2, as it relies on bonded stiffeners and extrusions for its structural stability. The panel is not fixed on its vertical edges, and the bonded connection are expected to deteriorate and fail quickly in the BS 8414 test. The way the internal corner is detailed will allow flames to bypass the vertical cavity barriers and attack the cavity of the wing wall. The vertical joint is ventilated and the fire will enter the assembly through this baffled joint. The horizontal joint is ventilated and the fire will enter the assembly through this baffled joint. Now, on the face of it, just looking at that, do you agree that it appears that Kingspan were planning to construct the Dubai test rig to maximize the chances of it not passing the 8414 test?
I mean, I think you can read it that way. However, I would say that what they're trying to do, and it comes back to the point I think that was referred to as a view of Mr. Hollinrake, which is that systems can be installed badly on site. And therefore, I think what they're trying to demonstrate is that products that existed on the marketplace that would be deemed to satisfy the linear route could be used in a design and installed badly and perhaps not pass BS 8414. Indeed.
And that by rigging the test up in this way, constructing it in this way, let me be a bit more neutral, to maximize the chances of failure of the test in order to prove the point.
Yeah, and I think, well, the million-dollar question is, how realistic of a system that would be designed and used is this?
Well, never mind the million-dollar question, even if that is the right figure. It's a simpler question than that. Do you accept that on the face of this email, Kingspan were planning to construct the Dubai test system so as to enhance as far as possible the chances that that test would fail?
That wasn't my understanding.
And that the failed test would then be used to persuade MPs of the dangers of mineral wool when tested in a full system test under BS 8414, so as to prove your case that rockwool or other mineral wool is no more safe than K15, even though it's deemed to be non-combustible.
That wasn't my understanding.
What was your understanding?
That they were trying to design a system made from materials that could be deemed to meet the linear route, that could be chosen by a designer and installed on a building, and that wouldn't necessarily pass the BS 8414 as they were installed.
Who led you to believe that?
Well, I would imagine it's come from my understanding from conversations with Adrian Pargeter and John Garbutt.
Did anybody tell you that the system that they were building was deliberately set up so as to introduce weaknesses in it?
No, definitely not.
Enhancing its failure?
Definitely not.
Right. Again, is this an email that you should have been cited on?
Well, this one more than the one I think you showed me earlier, because I'd like to understand why it's written how it's written.
Well, exactly. Thank you. Do I take it from that at the time you did not know that Kingspan's testing strategy for the purposes of the linear test for the MHCLG involved designing a system that contained deliberate design imperfections?
I don't believe that's the case.
So you don't believe that that is the case? You don't believe that it did contain design imperfections, deliberate design imperfections?
Can you ask me the question again, maybe in a different way, please?
Well, okay. Adrian Pargeter has told this inquiry that the test, which was carried out in May 2018, which was the subject of these emails, contained deliberate design imperfections. You've got no reason to dispute that, I assume.
No, I think it was designed, well, my understanding was it was designed to mimic products in a system that could be used in the real world.
I'm sorry, I think you need to answer my question. I'll try it one more time. You don't disagree with what Mr. Pargeter has told us, I assume, namely that the design of the test that was eventually undertaken in May 2018 in Dubai contained a limited number of deliberate design imperfections. Now, that's what he said, and we've been through that in a number of different ways with him. I'm assuming that you don't disagree with him on that.
Well, I think I do, because that's not the understanding that I had.
No. What was the understanding you had? Did you understand at the time that there would be no deliberately introduced design imperfections?
Well, the thing is, we didn't know whether it would pass or fail, is the first thing. And the way that the system was designed was to, my understanding was that the way the system had been designed was to mimic the way that materials could and were used on site. And
to that end, contained a number of intentional design imperfections. Did you know that?
Well, that's a more neutral way of saying it, I think, yes.
Did you know that, Mr. Burnley?
Did I know that?
Did you know?
No, I didn't. I didn't. No, my understanding was that we were designing a system with materials that would follow the linear route to compliance, and that we were going to build a system as it would be built in a normal building.
I'm going to try one more time. Did you know that the system, as being designed, contained a number of deliberate design imperfections?
No.
In order to enhance its chances? Thank you. Can we go on with the email? If we go down a bit further, we can see, I'm so sorry, if we go down a bit further, yes, we can see underneath G, assuming sign off of drawings tomorrow, various things are to happen. And then it says underneath that, also looking to source some Vitracor G2 via a contact in Dubai. This would be another deemed to satisfy product that we feel would perform poorly as part of a system. And then at the end, at the very foot of the page, do you see he says everything is going to have to go like clockwork for all this to work, but it is all possible. Now, this is April 2018. I think we know that Adrian Pargeter still reported to you at this time, didn't he?
He did, yes. Did
he discuss any of these plans with you, specifically the plan to test possibly with Vitracor G2, another deemed to satisfy product that he felt, or it was felt, would perform poorly as part of a system?
I don't think I recall that, no.
Right. if we go up to the next email up, page 2, we can see Nick Jenkins's email on the 11th of April 2018. I think you'll need to go to page 2 for this, I'm afraid. That's it. This is Nick Jenkins in response to an email from Adrian Pargeter that I haven't shown you, but I don't think I need to. And in the 3rd paragraph, he says, regarding the Dubai tests, please find attached the drawings for review and sign off. The assembly is currently detailed with a blockwork wall. It will in fact be an SFS wall. Then he says this, I have introduced as many weak, if you go turn the page, features stroke details as possible to ensure it has the best chance of performing poorly, whilst at the same time retaining the panel modules and cavity barrier arrangement associated with all tests to date. Did you know that the plan here was to have a system designed, quotes, to ensure that it has the best chance of performing poorly?
No, I don't.
Are you able to explain why it was, on your watch as managing director of Kingspan Insulation, that your team was planning to provide a test or set of test results to MPs, which had been undertaken with the best chance of performing poorly?
No, I can't answer that question.
Now, I want to ask you some questions about your own knowledge. Clearly, you weren't cited on these emails and knew little, if nothing, as you've told us, of the design imperfections. Are you able to tell us from your own independent recollection when the test, the subject of this run of emails in April 2018, took place?
No, I'm not.
Are you able to tell us from your own recollection what the outcome of that test was?
No, I'm not.
Do you know whether this was the only test that Kingspan carried out in furtherance of their linear route testing plan?
I don't know.
Now, let me give you a little bit of background then to help you. When Mr. Pargeter gave evidence to the public inquiry in December last year, before you started to give your evidence, Mr. Pargeter told the inquiry that the system test referred to in this email, the others in this run still on the screen, was carried out in Dubai on the 2nd of July 2018 and referred to by you when you signed your letter of the 6th of July 2018 to the Select Committee as Test 3. And then what happened is that in December 2020, we had a number of letters from Kingspan's solicitors. And then on the 14th of January 2021, this year, Mr. Pargeter volunteered a 5th witness statement saying that in fact there were 2 linear tests and that the test, the subject of this email run, was actually carried out on the 22nd of May 2018, which in the event passed. Now, I've given you a bit of background there. My first question against that background is, do you recall a system test being carried out on the 22nd of May 2018, which passed?
No, I don't.
Do you remember being involved in any discussions about setting up that test?
No.
Do you recall being involved in any discussion about the result of that test?
No, I don't.
Do you remember being involved in any discussions about whether or not to obtain a report for that test?
No, I don't.
Can we go, please, to KIN 30255503? If we go to page 2 in this email run, please. This is an email of the 8th of June 2018. So this is after the 22nd 2nd of May test, but it's the subject matter is a budget for 2 tests at Exover in Dubai, £78,813, as you can see from the foot of the screen there. Do you remember being involved in authorising a budget for the tests, the subject of those that email?
Well, the budgets would have been set up annually, and we used an average cost for a test of about £40,000. So that's not abnormal. So this would be part of a budget that would have been set aside for this.
I see. So did you have any involvement yourself in sanctioning budget spends on either the test in May, which you can't recall or don't know about perhaps, or the test in July?
No, I mean, I would have been involved in the budget planning process to agree with Peter Wilson and the Divisional Finance Director what amount of money we were setting aside for fire testing, but then it would be up to Adrian and his team to coordinate using that money.
I follow. So can we take it that your involvement was to set an overall budget, at the beginning of the financial year, and then for the teams themselves to draw down on it? Yes,
it was normally set up before the end of a calendar year for the following calendar year.
I understand. Can we go to KIN 3024929, please? This is an email sent by, I'm so sorry, I'll just wait for you to get there. Yes, this is an email sent by Adrian Pargeter on the 22nd of May, 2018. And the subject is non-com test, if you look at that. And you can see that the recipients of that email include you. Do you see that?
I do, yep.
As well as John Garbett and others, Peter Wilson, Mark Harris, etc. And I'll just read it to you. He says, guys, I've had confirmation from the guys in Dubai that the A2/RW test was a pass, peak temps around 400 and no flaming from the ACM. A new plan B is to get the G2 out to Dubai where we can convert from cassette to flat panel. Similar sizes to DCLG testing. Nick has confirmed that there is enough material to do this. The next test slot we can use is 24th June for a start of build and burn 2nd of July. This is the fastest way we can get another test. If all in agreement, I recommend we proceed ASAP. Now, the recipient list there is different from the list of recipients of the April emails that we looked at, which discussed deliberately weakening the test. Can you explain why you are included in this email run, but were not included in the March or April emails that we saw earlier?
No, I can't. But importantly, Peter Wilson's involved in this one. And I know that for this series of tests in 2018, Peter was more closely involved.
Yes, but can you explain why you were involved or included on this email chain, but not included in the ones in April?
No, I can't.
Right. Now, it looks from this email that Adrian Pargeter, would it be fair to say, expected that you as one of the recipients knew what this was about?
Yes, you can assume that.
Yes. I mean, did you know what this was about when you received this email, or did it come as something of a bolt from the blue?
Well, no, I knew we were doing this test on materials that complied with the leak code.
Right. So you knew that there was a test, but didn't know more than that. Is that the effect of your evidence, or did you know more?
Well, no, I think we've covered this. I knew there was a test designed, as we've discussed previously.
Right. Are you able to tell us why Jean Murtagh and Gilbert McCarthy, who were included in the March and April emails, are not included on this email?
Well, I would say because Adrian Pargeter was from the insulation business, and actually what is a bit of a cultural thing is that in the panels business, I did note that people generally copied Gilbert and Jean into everything. What Adrian is doing is copying Peter Wilson in, who was closely involved in these tests as the head of the global head of the insulation business.
Did you yourself have a conversation with either Jean Murtagh or Gilbert McCarthy about the May test passing?
No.
Do you know from your own knowledge whether in some other way they were made aware that this test had passed?
I don't know.
When Adrian Pargeter said that the test was a pass, peak temps around 400 and no flaming from the ACM, did you understand how well it had passed? Did you get any feeling for how far it had cleared the hurdle?
No, I mean, only from what's written in that email you can see.
Do you recall, well, let me ask you, what was the reaction within Kingspan on learning that this test had passed?
Oh, I don't think there was any huge reaction. It was one of a number of tests that we were doing.
Was there any degree of surprise or perhaps frustration within Kingspan that after having gone to so much trouble to set this test up and spending money on it, it had passed?
Well, no, because that was always a possibility. It could have passed, it could have failed.
Right. Are you aware of whether there was any investigation of why the test had passed?
No, I'm not aware.
Now, if we go back to the email, you can see, we can just go back to it. You can see in the third line, a new plan B is to get the G2 out to Dubai where we can convert from cassette to flat panel. Did you understand what Mr. Pargeter meant by the G2 there?
Well, I don't know that I would have done, but from the previous email you've shown me, it's referring to that other product, the Vitracor.
Indeed, but did you know that when you saw this email?
I wouldn't have done, no, I don't think so.
Okay. Can we take it that when you did see this email, you knew that not only that there had been a May test and that it had passed, but that a plan B was now required involving G2?
Yeah, well, that's absolutely what you can read into that email, isn't it?
Yes. And from that, did you understand that because the May test had succeeded, you now needed a second test which did not succeed?
Yeah, that's what it looks like, yes.
Yes, sorry, what you said was both inaudible to me and inaudible to the transcriber. Could you repeat?
Sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. I would say yes, that is what you can read into that. Yes, correct.
Is it what you understood at the time, just to be clear?
I think probably it was, yes. I think, yeah, that which is not in agreement with what I said earlier, but reading that, it does look like we're going to do another test. Yes. So from the email, I would have read into that, yes.
Yes, and the purpose of the test was to use the result in order to lobby government in order to present Kingspan's case on the ban on combustible material. Yes?
We were trying to provide evidence that using the linear route didn't necessarily give you a system that would pass BS 8414.
Yes. Now, I just want to ask you a little bit more about the plan B mentioned here. The G2 referred to as the Vitracor G2 honeycomb material that in fact was used, wasn't it, in the July test?
Yeah, I don't know.
And the plan A test was the test that had taken place that very morning, 22nd of May, with the Aluco Bond A2 panels.
Right.
I'm telling you that, but do you accept that?
I accept that, yes, absolutely.
Okay, now, do you know whether the test under Plan B, which eventually was carried out on the 2nd of July, as this email indicates it might be, was also intentionally weakened?
I don't know.
Do you know why Vitracor G2 was selected for use in the Plan B test?
I think it made comment to it in an email that you showed me before, but I wouldn't have known, no.
Now, I said earlier that I think it would come back to the G2 or Vitracor. I showed you the email of the 10th of April 2018 at KIN 404658, not very long ago. And we saw that he had described the Vitracor as another deemed to satisfy product that we feel would perform poorly as part of a system. You recall that?
I do, yes, that's the one I was just referring to.
Yes. Did you have any understanding yourself? Well, were you aware at the time, I'm sorry, let me ask this question a slightly different way. When you got the 22nd of May email you just looked at, were you aware that there was a view within Kingspan that the Vitracor G2 panels would perform poorly in a BS 8414 large-scale test?
No, I wouldn't have said I did.
Right. Now, I want to show you an extract from Adrian Pargeter's fifth witness statement, which is at KIN 3024975. And now, to be fair to you, this is a statement that Mr. Pargeter volunteered to the inquiry in January. It's signed on the 14th of January this year. And that means that it was produced by him and provided to the inquiry after you had started giving your evidence. And so you will not have seen it. So if there's anything else in this witness statement that you think you want to see when answering my question, then please do so and we can look at it. If we go specifically to paragraph 2.8 on page 4, I just want to show you what he says there about the July test. And because you haven't seen this statement before, at least you may not have done. Well, I should ask you, it went into the public domain yesterday. Were you following Mr. Pargeter's evidence when he was giving it?
Only at lunchtime and late yesterday, because I was actually at work yesterday. So no, I didn't see much of it.
I understand. Did you go on the website and look at his witness statement?
I haven't, no, not this one. I've seen his previous ones.
Okay, well, let's just look at the whole paragraph then. He says this: the July test, that's July 2018, was carried out on a system incorporating A2 rated limited combustibility Vitricor G2 flat cladding panels, A1 rated non-combustible Rockwool duo slab synthetic fiber insulation, and Siderise RX 25 9030 horizontal and Siderise RV 9030 vertical cavity barriers. The system tested in the July test closely replicated the DCLG tests numbered 2, 4, and 6, with extra panel joints and therefore gaps in the wing wall. If anything, the system was more robust than that tested by the DCLG because the Vitricor panel edges were folded over, thus protecting the core of the panels from the fire. We decided to carry out this test because we suspected, no more, that a system utilizing the Vitricor G2 panels might not be able to pass a large-scale test, even when part of a robust design. Now, I've shown you all of that. I just want to focus on the last sentence there. We decided to carry out this test because we suspected, no more, that a system utilizing the Vitricor G2 panels might not be able to pass. Were you aware that Mr. Pargeter suspected, and indeed possibly others at Kingspan, suspected that a system using Vitricor G2 panels might not be able to pass a large-scale test?
I wouldn't necessarily say specifically about the Vitricor panels, but what I would say is that I was aware that we were trying to design the test with products that would meet the linear route to compliance.
Yes, that's not what he's saying here. I understand what you're saying about that, but I'm specifically putting to you this question. He says, we decided to carry out this test because we suspected, no more, that a system utilizing the Vitricor G2 panels might not be able to pass a large-scale test. Did you know that?
I don't recall knowing that. No.
Do you know why Adrian Pargeter and others sanctioned a second test in Dubai when they suspected that the Vitricor G2 panels might cause that test to fail?
No, I can't answer that.
Were you yourself aware of the performance of Vitricor G2 in previous fire tests?
No, I wasn't.
Did you know, I can take this, I think, quite shortly, did you know that Adrian Brazier of Kingspan had been looking for or chasing down Vitricor G2 since about August 2017?
No, although I did see a comment in one of the emails that you've shown me saying that they were trying to track them down.
Yes. Did you know that it had come from Australia?
I think that does ring a bell, actually, but that again may have come from the email you've just shown me.
I'm going to have to stop because I've been a bit slow on the uptake, but I think our chairman has disappeared from the screen. And that's happened about 5 minutes ago, perhaps. I think I'm going to have to ask the remaining panel if we can break and recover connection so that the chairman can come back. I note the time, but it's important that the chairman is here. Mr. Burnley, I think I'll take matters into my own hand. Other members of the panel, Mr. Akbor, Ms. Istefan, if we can call a break now.
Yes, that's fine.
And find the chairman, then we can get him back. Mr. Burnley, I'm sorry about this. We're going to have to take a pause for the moment. I'm sorry that the pause may go on longer than 4:30, which is when we were going to break anyway. But if we can stop now and find the chairman, we'll come straight back as soon as we can.
I understand.
Thank you very much.
Well, hello again, everyone. I managed to get back into the virtual hearing. I don't know what happened exactly, except that my computer turned itself off entirely unexpectedly. But never mind, our technicians have managed to re-establish the connection. And I think perhaps the first thing I should do is to apologise to Mr. Burnley for having interrupted his evidence in such a peremptory way. Mr. Burnley, you can see me and hear me, can you?
Yes, I can.
Well, there you are. I was the victim of technological glitch. I don't quite know exactly what happened or why, but these things do sometimes happen. As a result, it's now already 20 to 5, and we weren't going to manage to finish your evidence this evening, I'm afraid, in any event. So I think the sensible thing is for us to take a break at that point and ask you to come back tomorrow. I'm sorry about that, because I'm sure you would like to have got away today, but as some slight consolation, I think I can tell you that there's a very, very good chance that you'll be out sometime before lunch tomorrow, if that helps you in making any arrangements you need to make.
No, it does. Thank you. That's very helpful.
All right, good. So there it is. Usual instruction, please don't talk to anyone about your evidence or anything relating to it overnight. And we will look forward to seeing you at 10 o'clock tomorrow.
Yes, absolutely. I understand.
And as far as everyone else involved in the hearing is concerned, again, I apologise to you for the breakdown. My connection has now been restored, as you can see, but we've reached a point at which, as I explained to Mr. Burnley, the sensible thing is to stop for the day. So we will break there and resume tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. See you all then. Thank you very much.